Today, I'm not coming to you with the client story. Today, I'm coming to you with my own. And I'll be honest, that always feels a little more exposed and vulnerable. But that's what I ask of you guys to do in your own relationships. I found that the episodes where I share what's actually been going on in my own life tend to be the ones that resonate the most. Because you don't just need theory, you need to know that the person talking to you has actually lived this. So here's what we're going to talk about today: being on autopilot. Not the kind where you're checked out and obviously struggling, the sneaky kind, the kind that looks like productivity and routine and keeping everything running smoothly while quietly costing you the connection you actually want in your relationship. I was in it and I didn't even realize it until I looked back and saw what it was doing to me and to my marriage. So if you've ever thought, we're fine, well, something in your gut said, but are we really? This one is for you. Go grab a warm drink and let's dive in. Welcome to Relationship Reset, a podcast for high-achieving couples who've been together for over a decade and don't want to feel like roommates anymore. I'm Katie Russler, relationship strategist and couples counselor with almost 20 years of experience helping ambitious couples reconnect, strengthen communication, and turn their relationship into the best part of their success story. This podcast is about using practical tools and a lot of real talk to help you understand your patterns, stop feeling stuck and discouraged, and start working on your relationship in ways that actually fit your busy life. Because your relationship shouldn't be the cost of your success, it should be the best part of it. So let's dive in. Let me describe autopilot because I think it gets misunderstood. When most people hear autopilot, they picture someone who's given up, someone who's checked out, lying on the couch, not showing up. And I want you to let go of that image right now, because that is not what I'm talking about. In high-achieving couples, the people I work with, and probably you, autopilot looks like the opposite. It looks like being incredibly productive while being completely checked out at the same time. It's kind of a weird space to be in. It looks like a full calendar. The bills are getting paid, kids getting where they need to go, the household running like a machine, work commitments met, social commitments met, everything managed and organized and functional. But your relationship, the actual living, breathing relationship between two people, that keeps getting moved to the bottom of the list. I call this roommate mode. And it's one of the patterns I see most often with the couples I work with. Two very capable, successful people who have somewhere along the way drifted into running a household together rather than building a life together. And here's what makes it so tricky to catch. Routine feels stable. And after 10, 15, 20 years together, it's incredibly easy to confuse stability with stagnation. To look at your life and think, we're fine, when really you're just functioning. There's no drama, no big fight, no obvious sign that anything is wrong, just this quiet, kind of low-grade distance that you can't quite name. And that was me, for longer than I'd like to admit. At the start of this year, I made a decision. I chose two words, just two, to guide me: self-discipline and self-trust. Now, I want to be careful here because this was not like a punishment thing. It wasn't a productivity push. It wasn't me deciding I needed to be harder on myself or do more. It was a way back to myself. Practically, what that looked like was starting to go for runs even when I didn't feel like it. Because I know having a regular practice of running actually helps me function way better in all the roles in my life. It was being more consistent in my work, really following through and following up with the things that were important to keep things moving in my work. It was actually following through on the things I said mattered to me, the values that were important to me. It was being genuinely present with my girls, not just physically there, but actually there, and being more intentional with my husband, not just logistically, not just as a co-manager of our household, but actually present when we were together. And here's what I started to notice. The more I started showing up with the self-discipline and trusting myself, the less resentment I was carrying into our relationship. That was the connection I had been missing. And I want to say that again because it's important. When I wasn't being intentional in my own life, I was bringing a kind of low-grade frustration into everything, including our marriage. I wasn't fully aware of it, but my husband felt it for sure. And our interactions had this edge to them that I kept attributing to things between us, when really a significant part of it was coming from what was unaddressed within me. I had been so busy managing life that I had stopped checking in with myself. And all of that, the unmet needs, the things I'd been tolerating, the ways I'd been running on empty, it was leaking into us. I see this constantly with couples I work with. especially high achievers. When you're not living in alignment with what actually matters to you, when your days are full, but your soul feels really hollow at times, that misalignment doesn't stay quietly inside you. It leaks into your closest relationship. It shows up as irritability, as emotional withdrawal, as scorekeeping, as a kind of low level resentment that has no single identifiable source. Not because your partner did something wrong, but because something inside of you is asking for more attention and it's not getting it. And so you look around for an explanation, and your partner is the closest target. And here's where it starts to get interesting and honestly a little hopeful for many of us. As I started taking more ownership, I started stepping off of my own autopilot. Something shifted in our relationship that I hadn't planned for. Our conversations changed. There was less defensiveness, less ego, more genuine curiosity about each other, a greater willingness to understand rather than just respond. I found myself actually listening rather than preparing what I was going to say next. And my husband, he actually started to show up differently too. Not because I asked him to, not because I pointed it out or gave him a list or had some big we need to talk conversation about it, but because the energy between us had shifted. When I stopped coming into our interactions carrying that low level resentment, he didn't need to be defensive anymore. And if he ever did show up defensive, I knew there was nothing I needed to fight about with him. I could just calmly address that, hey, I'm not attacking you. When I was more grounded in myself, there was simply more room for both of us. This is something that relationship therapist Terry Real talks about, the idea that relationships are systems. When one person changes the way they're moving through a system, it creates new possibilities for the other. You don't need both people fully on board at the start. I've seen this in my own life, and I've also seen it with my clients. This is why I always say your partner doesn't have to show up to our relationship game plan call. We can create a game plan for you, and as you start to shift those things, you're going to notice changes in your relationship. When one partner decides to step off of autopilot, to get honest about their own patterns, to start doing the work, not as a strategy to change the other person, but out of genuine desire to live more intentionally, then slowly the relationship starts to move. It's not overnight. And in fact, sometimes there's some kickback first, but it does improve. And I'm not suggesting that your partner has no work to do. They probably do. But I can tell you from personal experience and 20 years of professional experience, stepping off autopilot yourself is almost always where the real change begins. So I want to slow down before we get to the practical stuff, because sometimes what we need isn't more information, it's a moment of honesty. So I want to offer you a few questions. Not to fix anything right now, not to create a to-do list, just get honest with yourself. Where in your life have you been going through the motions rather than actually choosing? What have you been tolerating in yourself that you've been quietly blaming on your relationship? When did you last show up for yourself in a way that had nothing to do with productivity or output? Ooh, and this one. When did you last show up for your partner with actual presence, not just proximity? There's a difference, right? Proximity is being in the same room. Presence is actually being there, being curious, being connected. Those are very different things. And I think a lot of us know the difference even when we don't want to admit it. This is not about blame. It's about honesty. And honesty, the kind that starts with yourself first, is almost always the first step back towards each other. Okay, now let's get practical. Here are 3 things you can start doing right now, this week, to begin stepping off autopilot. 1, do a personal check-in, not a productivity audit, or like, am I getting things done? Are we working well as a couple? I want you to ask yourself honestly, where in my own life am I running on empty, going through the motions, or tolerating something I haven't addressed? Take 10 minutes to write it out. No filtering, no editing. Just get really honest about what's actually been draining you. Because until you can name what's been leaking into your relationship, it's really hard to do anything about it. Next thing, choose one small act of intentionality this week toward yourself and one towards your partner. Not a big gesture. It doesn't need to be this huge thing, okay? Something simple. For yourself, do the one thing you keep pushing to the bottom of your list that actually fills you up. For your partner, put your phone in the other room for one evening and just be present with them. Cook dinner together without also watching something. Ask them a question you actually don't know the answer to. Small, intentional, and your presence. That's the key. Okay, last tip. Notice the edge. This one is something you can try today. The next time you feel that low-level irritability, you know what I'm talking about, or that frustration with your partner, pause before you respond. Ask yourself, is this actually even about them? Or is this something I'm carrying from something else today? This is not about excusing your partner's behavior, okay? Sometimes things really are about them, but more often than you might expect, that quick flare of frustration has roots somewhere inside you. about something else. So get curious about that instead of just reacting. This is one of the most powerful things you can do for your relationship. Pause, ask yourself a curious question, and then decide how you're going to react. I know it seems simple, but it is probably one of the hardest things in communication to do, to pause before you react. Okay, lastly, I want to leave you with something fun. I want to help you and your partner connect this week in a really simple and easy way. It has the potential to make you laugh, and it makes sure you guys get to have some good quality time together. So, down in the show notes, you're going to find my 18 questions for couples. It's 18 questions that you get to ask each other. And I don't want you to try to guess each other's answers or tell the person this is what your answer should be or would be. Just ask and take the time to listen. See if there's something there that you forgot about that you really value hearing again. The couples who have used these 18 questions have loved them, whether they were on a road trip and used them, had a date night, or were just sitting on the couch together. It gave them something to do, and they found a lot of value in creating that space. So go in the show notes, click 18 questions for couples, and go grab your free cards to start asking each other questions this week. Okay, the distance in a long-term relationship is rarely about one thing. It's about 1,000 small moments of not quite being there, of choosing the path of least resistance, of running on routine instead of intention, like I was. And the way back, it's the same thing in reverse. Small, intentional choices, starting with you. Starting with getting honest about where you've been on autopilot and what it's been costing you. You don't need both people to go first. You just need one person willing to step off of autopilot, and that can be you. So go grab my 18 questions for couples so that tonight or this week, the two of you can both get off of autopilot and be more intentional in your relationship. Okay, everyone, I'll see you next week. Before you go, I want to leave you with this. The effort you put into your relationship is one of the most important investments you'll ever make. How you communicate and grow together shapes your home, your leadership, and the example you set for the people around you. Relationship work is truly legacy work, and it quietly impacts more lives than we often realize. If this episode resonated, consider sharing it with someone you care about, a partner, a friend, or another couple who's building a full life and want their relationship to be the best part of it too. And if you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to follow or subscribe to Relationship Reset. Leaving a rating or review also helps this message reach more couples who are ready to grow with intention. I'll see you next week.